Well, hello everybody and welcome to Jeff's Baking Blog. So today I'm going to make some Sultana Scones or scones, American style. So these are going to be those wedge-shaped or triangular shaped scones or scones rather than the round ones which we break in half in England and fill with cream and jam. And they're very tasty and very easy to make. And I start off by preheating my oven to 190 degrees Celsius, 170 Celsius with a fan, 375 Fahrenheit. And I've lined a baking tray with a silicone mat, but you can use parchment paper instead if you wish. And I'll go on to the ingredients. And for this I have 300 grams, which is 2 cups based on scooping packed flour into a 250 milliliter cup of self-raising flour. Now, if you don't have self-raising flour, use the same amount of plain flour and stir into it 12 grams, 3 teaspoons of baking powder, and it will be a good equivalent. I have 113 grams, half a cup of cold unsalted butter, 50 grams, a quarter of a cup of caster sugar, 120 millilitres, half a cup of double cream, 60 millilitres, a quarter of a cup of milk, 1 medium egg, which would be large in the USA. I have 70 grams of sultanas here, which is about half a cup, and I soaked those in some orange juice for an hour, and then I drained the orange juice and I patted the sultanas dry. That's just going to make them slightly more juicy, basically. I have the zest from 1 lemon, 5 millilitres, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and 1.5 grams, a quarter of a teaspoon of salt. And then to go on the top, or to brush on the top, I have about 15 millilitres, a tablespoon of double cream, but you can use milk and you could use a beaten egg, it's up to you, but because I've got cream left over I'm using that. And then I'm going to make a little icing drizzle to go on the top, and for that I have 25 grams, which is just under a quarter of a cup of icing sugar, and about a tablespoon of lemon juice. And I may not need all of that lemon juice. I'm just going to mix the lemon juice into the icing sugar until it's runny enough to drizzle over the top the way I want to. So that's all the ingredients, and the first thing I'm going to do is to put my lemon zest into my little bit of sugar, and I'm going to rub that in to release the oils. That's going to give a nice subtle lemon flavour to the scones themselves. That's good enough like that. And then I need to rub the butter into the flour, the sugar and the salt. But to do that I'm going to use the processor bowl of my immersion blender just for ease. So I'm going to put the flour in. And then the salt can go on top of that, and then I'll put the sugar in, and I just pulse that a few times to get those combined with each other. And if you were using plain flour, you put the flour and the baking powder in, obviously. And that was just to mix the the dry ingredients together, and I'll put the butter in. And I've cut the butter into small pieces. And I'm going to pulse that until the butter breaks down into the flour, but not fine, not really finely like fine breadcrumbs, quite coarse, because if there's a few little chunks of butter, that's perfectly fine in scones. And I think that's as much processing as I need to do. So then I'm going to tip that into a large bowl. And you can see there's some butter pieces there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick that up and I'm just going to rub that a little bit between my fingers, and that's going to flatten those pieces into flakes. And with that butter flattened into flakes like that, I'm just going to set that to one side for a moment, and I'm going to mix the wet ingredients together. So I'm going to put the egg, the milk and the vanilla into my cream. And I'm going to whisk those together like that. And then I'm going to pour that into the dry ingredients. So I'll just make a little bit of a well in the bottom. And I'll mix that together until it forms quite a sticky wet dough basically. And all the flour is coated. And that's good enough like that. So then I'll lightly flour my surface. And I'll put the dough onto it. And then I'll just flatten it out, and I'm going to sprinkle some of the sultanas over it, and then I'll fold it up and flatten it and sprinkle more over until I've incorporated the sultanas basically. And I'll flour it. Because it's sticky, I can put a little bit of flour on the top like that. And I'm folding it a few times without working it very much. This is just to basically get the sultanas mixed through, and then I'm going to form it into a disc, and I'm going to make that about 9 inches, 25 centimetres wide. And I think that's good enough like that. So then I'm going to cut it into 8 wedges. And to do that, I'm simply going to cut it roughly in half in both directions, and then across again. Whoops, that's once like that. And then I'm going to cut down to make my wedges like that. And I'm going to pick each wedge up and put it on my baking tray, and I'm going to leave a gap between each one. And there's my 8. Now they're not all the same size, but that doesn't matter. I'm sure you can do a better job of dividing them than I did. So I'm going to simply take some cream and I'm going to brush it on the top. I don't want to go down the sides. Just like that. That's good enough. And I'm going to put those into the oven, and I'm going to bake them for between 20 and 25 minutes until they've risen quite nicely and they've browned on top. Then I'll take them out of the oven and I will leave them on the tray for a couple of minutes. Then I'll put them onto a wire rack to cool completely, and once they've cooled I'll come back and we'll put some icing on the top. I baked my Sultana scones American style for 25 minutes, and they coloured nicely on the top and they rose nicely. So I took them out of the oven and put them onto a wire rack, and they've now cooled down. So I'll show you what they look like now. And as you can see, they've baked up quite nicely, and they've cooked nicely on the underneath as well. So I'm going to just put those to one side for a moment, and I'm going to make the little bit of icing which I want to drizzle. So I'm going to tip in some of my lemon juice. I'm simply going to stir the icing around until it comes together, and if it's too thick I can add a little bit more lemon juice, and if it's too thin I can always add a little bit more sugar, but I don't need very much because I'm only going to drizzle a little bit onto each of the scones. And that's a reasonable consistency. So I'm just going to leave that for a few minutes because the sugar will stiffen that up just a little bit more. So I've started to ice them, as you can see, and you don't have to be very strict about how you do it. You can do it any way you want, and I'm just taking a little bit onto a teaspoon and drizzling it haphazardly, basically in zigzags. Onto each one. And that's those done. So I'm just going to leave those for a few minutes so that that icing can set up just a little bit. Then I'll come back and we'll have a taste. So having left the Sultana Scones American style to let the icing set up a little bit, I'll have a taste of this small one. I'll just break a piece off. Very, very good. I'll show you the inside. So that looks very nice inside, nice and light, and it's nice and soft inside. And of course, you could break them in half if you wanted to, if they would work like that, and you can put some cream or some jam or whatever you want in, or you can simply break pieces off and spread some butter on. So very, very nice indeed, and very easy to make. Of course, you could also cut them out into rounds like the more traditional British type of scone if you wanted to, and that would work. You may not have to bake them for quite so long, but that would work as well. So that's going to be it for this recipe. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there'll be an eye that you can click on, and that will take you to a link for the recipe, and I'll put a link below the video as well. And I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.